Okay, so the last couple of videos on Mitch's Proverbs from opening concepts were quite long, and I was quite looking forward to getting to Proverb 12 because he covers it very briefly. It's just one quick example he gives, and Gary Koscielny in Sunny Florida Backgammon Club, when he looks at that, he kind of says, "Look, there's not much to this. It's a bit of a he argues against it, thinks it's a little bit risky to play this way anyway." And I thought, this is great. I'm going to finally do a short video. But in fact, the more I looked into this Proverb 12 is just called Hiss and Split. And the more I looked into it, the more I discovered that it's a different concept. Generally in backgammon, this concept is known as the tempo play. And I found more and more, and as you've heard me say, I will use these videos really for my own learning purposes, and I don't understand tempo plays, or I didn't understand tempo plays. So I've spent a busy week going through as many backgammon books as I can find, as many videos as I can find about tempo plays. So I've got to the extent of, not only is this what I thought was going to be a really quick video, not as quick as all that, but in fact, this is just part one, because I'm going to break this into two videos. There's so much to it. I'm going to use this video, I suppose, to introduce the idea of the tempo play, and then the next video, I'm going to look at kind of some of the principles behind it, because as I said, I just think it's important to be kind of aware of this concept. It's a well-known concept in backgammon that we can learn from. So the standard position, Mitchie gives this position, Paul McGreal gives this position, Walter Trice gives this position. It's in most of the videos, Nick Blazier's videos, Dan Revere. They all start with, this is the standard position. Our opponent, black, has opened with a 6-2. And if you look, they're as usual, we're going white and bearing into the bottom right hand side. Black is opened with a 6-2, and now we've rolled a 5-4. And the way the hit and split works, according to Mitchie, is basically we've got a powerful weapon which kills our opponent's good combination rolls, except for some doubles, in the next go. So Mitchie focuses on the bottom end of the board. He says, well, we hit with the 5, we hit our opponent, and then we split at the back with the 4. And that's, as you can see, is the correct thing to do. Not a hugely disastrous thing to play a safer option, but it's just the concept itself of the tempo play that makes sense. And the way I see it is, let's just take that and just reverse that. If you look at how would you play a 4 here, the only reasonable way of playing the 4 is to play one of our back checkers forward with the 4. And now that checker is now vulnerable. Paul McGreal refers to this as our checker is now under the gun. So we've split in a way. The way I kind of see it is nearly more helpful. Rather than hit and split, this is like a split and hit, because we've split at the back. But if you look, our black has a chance with a 6-3, a 6-1, a 3-1, double 4s, and a couple of other doubles that are less relevant. But basically, black has several chances, basically, not just to hit our checker there, our blot there, but to cover it and make a point in their home board. So to slow them down, the idea of the tempo play is we're trying to take half their roll away. To slow them down, we hit with the 5. We use the 5. We hit. They've the blot on our 1 point, and we hit it with. We could come down safely like that from 13 to 8, but we're just under so much. We've done nothing. We left ourselves vulnerable at the back. So instead, we put that checker back and we just hit 6-1. And I said, this is the thing about the tempo play that Mitchie doesn't really emphasize, but it's all the other pundits do. What we're trying to do is deprive our opponent of half their roll. So when they roll, one half their roll is going to be used to get their checker off their bar. Now they could hit us. They could roll a 1, in which case we have a checker at the back, gives us a bit more ammunition to help us make a anchor at the back. Improves our chances of an anchor at the back. But if they don't hit us, they've only half the remaining roll to use, and they could hit looking up the top of the board again. They could hit us with a 6, a 3, or a 1, but except for double 3s and double 1s, they're not covering, they're not making the point, and they'll leave a blot there that we can hit back and then in the next go. So This is it for people like McGreal and Walter Trice. It's about the top side of that board that we're looking at. It's about protecting our checker that we're advanced in the top. For people like Mitchie and Nick Blazier, they're talking much more about black's connectivity at the back. That it's much more about stopping black making their own advanced anchor. They were, if we hadn't hit there, black could have rolled a 6 and made an anchor on our 7 point. But by hitting them, it's much harder. They're losing connectivity of their back checkers as well. I definitely prefer the first example. Now, that was the starting point for, typically shown. But you could also use, Chris Bray comes up with the example. What happens if instead of rolling a 5 and a 4, you roll a 5 and a 2? Here, it's less of a need. It's still the right thing to hit with this, do the tempo play, but it's far less significant, it's far less important, because if you look at it, when we come forward with our 2, at that expression that I said McGreal said, under the gun, we're not as under the gun here, because only 2 of black's checkers are directly able to hit that checker that we move forward. Their black's blot on the top left quadrant can't reach us, so it's less of a threat. So we're under less of a threat. So that's why it's less significant. However, if we were playing against, if black instead of rolling a 6-2 rolled a 6-4 and opened like that, which is very likely. Now look at our 2. Now black's spare blot in the top left could hit us, and for that reason, the tempo play becomes much more significant and very much more the right thing to do. Now, Chris Bray, one of the top backgammon coaches from the UK, he takes that position, but he just tweaks it slightly and says, in his book, when he talks about the tempo play, he uses this as an example. It's the same thing again, and again, it's just correcting is, we split and then we hit the tempo hit of our opponent on their 1 point, just to make it harder for them to kind of progress their position. So we've looked at when their opponent had a 6-4 and a 6-2. If it's a 6-3, would you do a tempo play? Just have a quick look at it and think. And the answer is no, you wouldn't. Much easier to come on with the 5 and hit. So we'll be looking in the next video about kind of rules for tempo plays. But one thing I'd say is, if there's a more constructive thing to do, do it. It's as simple as that. And be a blunder not to hit a huge blunder to try a tempo play there. I mentioned about connectivity in the back checkers. Here it's less of an issue to hit. However, there's a better thing to do. We've talked about fighting for a good point. When we come down with the 5, we could split at the back, but again, if you count it up, there's so many good rolls for your opponent next go. So rather than splitting at the back, it's easier just to come on down and again take half our opponent's roll away. Just to reiterate, the idea of the tempo roll is to take half our opponent's roll away and just leave them stuck like that. And that's the correct thing to do. Now, we take that position, but I just looked at it, what if our opponent had split their checkers? Instead of rolling a 6-2, they'd roll a 2-1 at the back. Is the tempo play right then? No. Tempo play it's not a disastrous error, but our opponent is so busy tidying things up at the back that we don't need to take the unnecessary risk of hitting them. Now, Paul McGreal wrote the Bible of backgammon. It's called Backgammon. And he looks at tempo plays, and he was, I suppose, he was the first use of the term hit and split. But he's a little bit, it's moved on really since then. That was in the 1970s, 80s. So he's the example of tempo play. How would you play a 5-3? And I think we'd all naturally play the 5-3 the way that you cover the hit the black and then cover the point. That's the correct thing to do. It's not a tempo play as such, as Walter Trice would say that a tempo play, quite a few opening responses involve hitting a blot on your home board that will deprive your opponent of half a roll. But the idea of the tempo play, it's that you're doing it when there's nothing else except putting your opponent off balance. It's the only reason you're doing it. He Walter Trice has a great phrase. He says it's like a boxer's left jab. It's not necessarily supposed to do any real damage. It's effective in that it just stops the opponent from carrying out a threat or for consolidating a position. So that's the logic of that. But that was which McGreal talked about as a tempo play. But he does come up with what I thought was a very useful principle, and is that you shouldn't slot a point in your home board while your own back men are split or exposed. Now, look at it from Black's point of view here. Black has split their back checkers and has slotted their 5 point. And that just means they're vulnerable to a tempo play. Now, we want to try and hit that blot in the top right. We desperately want to try and hit that. We can't with this roll of a 5 and a 2. We needed a 4. But we can buy ourselves another chance of it by playing a tempo play. So look at our 8 point. There's 3 checkers in our 8 point. We'll move one of them forward 5 and put black in the bar, and another 2. Now we haven't deprived black of half a row. We've deprived black of their whole row. And barring double ones, it'll mean we'll have a shot at that blot in the top right one more time, which would give us a big racing advantage if we haven't did it. And that's the right thing to do. Walter Trice, in his book Backgammon Boot Camp, he's very thorough on tempo plays and tempo hits, and I kind of learned a lot from him. And just a few examples from him. He has a lovely expression. He talks about this as being like his phrase is, sometimes I feel as if a mountain is about to fall on my head. And he uses this example of white being our back checkers on the top right. And he said, look at the mountain of checkers black has there. They have 11 checkers threatening to avalanche on top of you. And his line is that basically it's worth a considerable positional sacrifice just to stave off the avalanche for one row. So with this, I mean, we could come out with the 5 and don't know what you do with the 3, really. Any roll, it's just wrong. So instead, think about another way. Just come out with the 3 and then stave off the avalanche by hitting black's checker there. If we get hit back, well, we've got more ammunition to build an anchor in the face of that avalanche. But if we don't get hit back, black can't really do too much harm to us in the top right part of the board because they've only got half their roll. They've got a single roll to dice to use, so they're going to be vulnerable if they try to hit us. And that's why, for that reason, look at it. It's a very, very significant error if you weren't to use that roll. Finally, Walter Trice, I'm going to go back to him again. He's just an example of sometimes it's not the right thing to do, and he makes the point that we have to be careful. This was Gary Kishenley, so careful rushing into a tempo hit. We could play the 4 off the bar. We're white, we've got a checker on the bar. We could come in with the 4 and then tempo hit with the 5. But Walter Trice's big thing is that if our opponent's position is already well established and consolidated, and they're not going to get a hell of a lot stronger, we're better off holding off on the tempo play. His point there is that, if we were to do a tempo hit here now, we're not really preventing black doing anything around the board. So the right thing here to do is, and he also says, look, there's a much better option here. If you come in with the 4 and then just play it 5 more forward, you're covering our white blot in the top left-hand quadrant. You can cover that, and we've made an extra point out there. And that's definitely the right thing to do. A tempo hit here would be a big blunder. But it's interesting, Walter Trice, he just takes that position and he says, look, we could tweak it. If this is about our opponent having a well-established, consolidated position, let's tweak it slightly. So if you look in the top left-hand quadrant, black has 2 piles of 3 checkers there. If we take the one to the furthest left and move that checker forward onto the 1 point, just advance that checker, and so black has left a loose blot lying around. And if you look at the pile of 3 black checkers in the bottom left quadrant, if we move one of them back just a little, so there's another blot lying around. Now black has problems. Black has loose checkers around the place that he'd like to tidy up. So if we can stop him tidying it up, this time we'll come in with the 4 and then use the spare white checker on our 6 point to hit black's checker on our 1 point. So we play 6 to 1 here. We come in the 4 and play 6 to 1 with the other checker. It means we're guaranteed a shot at a black blot in the next go, and we're hitting black before they can get too established. So that's Walter Trice's point: is use the tempo hit sometimes before your opponent gets established, and that's why it's the right thing to do on this occasion. Finally, last example from Walter Trice of a position he encountered in a match. This isn't an opening game position at all. This is very much mid to late game position. But situation where his opponent, Walter Trice would life himself, his opponent had rolled was as White had rolled a 5-2. Not a lot to not. You'd be forgiven for saying, well, what do? You could come in with the 5 and maybe shuffle another one of your checkers forward 2, or you could come in with the 2 and maybe tidy up the checkers to the back. But it's a huge blunder not to do the right play here, and I don't know if I'd be brave enough to do the right play, but the hint is in this is a lesson on tempo hitting, so it might give you an idea of it. You come in with the 5, and if you look at it, that poor white checker at the top there, it's absolutely getting crushed by black checkers. If we leave that poor white checker alone there, they're just going to be hammered by whatever an avalanche, as Walter Trice calls it. There's what is it? There's 14 black checkers surrounding that one poor white checker. We're in big trouble, so we've got to do something about that. We have to tempo hit. We have to stop black having half a row, and the only way to do that is to use the 2 to hit the black checker in the bottom right quadrant, our home board. We can get very attached to our 5-point home board. We've got to break it up. Hit black. If black dances, doesn't come out, well then we're strong favourites. Now suddenly we 5s, 1s, 3s, 4s, everything works out. 6s work out famously for us. So suddenly we're very strong if black dances. If black hits us, which they're slight favourite to do, well then we'll have an extra checker. So our poor solo white checker at the top will suddenly have a bit of company of their own, a bit of reinforcements, and we'll have a chance of making a good anchor there. So difficult one to spot, but look at it, a significant blunder not to play it that way. So as I said, that's the first of 2 videos. I just found so much material on tempo plays. I hadn't covered it before. I didn't know it myself. I've been kind of learning it in the last week. That there's just so much out there. I just needed to split into 2 videos. So shortly will be the second video. The most thorough analysis of tempo hitting I could find is by Dirk Sheeman in his book To Hit or Not to Hit, and I'll be dealing with that in the next video.